So next we're going to find Moon and chat with him a bit about multi-ball contact juggling. We have him right here. Hi Moon, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Moon and I'm an Italian contact juggler. I'm here to talk about and share with you some tips about how to be magical and smooth in multi-ball contact juggling.
So you have a very slow and controlled multi-ball style that I really enjoy watching. What would you say are some of the most important concepts for your style of multi-ball contact juggling?
Timing in multi-ball is very important. Going slowly will help you to value your technique. Your goal should be to keep regular your CJ time and try to have much more control you can on your balls. Breathing is very important too. Try to be relaxed while playing and not in tension with your muscles. Maybe you should try to have a circular breathing. Keep in mind how much helpful your free hand can be while you are playing contact juggling, especially in multi-ball. Usually free hands are not used while playing, but with a few moves you can add some magic to your multi-ball.
So the students have just got to the point where they're starting to work on 3-ball palm spinning, and the normal response is feeling like the balls are too big or that their hands are too small, and it feels just impossible. I'm curious, for you, what are your thoughts on size of balls? I know you use much larger than 75mm balls for a lot of your palm spinning, but what do you think is a good standard size for someone who's trying to learn?
Every contact juggler has the same doubt in multi-ball. Which size of ball should I use? Right now I'm using 100mm, but in my opinion, bigger doesn't mean harder, not necessarily. In my experience, I've learned that if you can hold it, you can spin it. Bigger balls have much more surface to touch, and so they are easier to control, but they are very heavy, and so your wrist will not appreciate your play with big balls. Bigger balls are more visible, and it's a pleasure to play with them, but due to their weight, they are hard to use, so be careful about your wrist and stretch before playing. Smaller balls give you more potential space, and they are not so heavy. Probably best size to start multi-ball is 75mm. Maybe with one 4-ball, 19 or 100mm are the best size at the end, while for more complicated morphing patterns, 75s and 80s are very good. Then, if you like challenges, try to morph with big balls. Very beautiful to see, but very hard.
Very well said. Thanks so much, Moon. I was worried that you were going to have a different answer to that. I'm going to keep using my 75mm and press on with the workshop. Thank God I don't have to change the ball size. Thanks so much for coming and talking to us. We really don't get a chance enough to actually meet in the real world, and I rarely get the chance to see you spin. After many years of 75mm balls being standard for palm spinning, a lot of people who were performing the art wanted to upsize their balls in order to increase the visibility for their audience. A lot of people complained that a 75mm ball was in fact too small to be seen by large crowds or people from a distance. And they found that by moving up to 85mm or even further into 90mm, they weren't really sacrificing any of their techniques. They could do many of the same things that they were able to do. It just took a little bit more control. And the payoff was a much larger amount of shape moving around, a much more visual style of contact juggling that really put the emphasis on the balls and the beauty of the reflection through an acrylic. Many British contact jugglers as well as Italian contact jugglers started to move up in ball size, and much like Moon was saying when we talked to him, a lot of the techniques hit a restriction point. Many techniques that are now considered part of palm spinning, especially in 3-ball palm spinning, can't be done with this large size ball. But thumb lifts, pinky lifts, pyramids, these are all actually very possible, the normal size set of hands, to do with a 100mm ball. A fantastic exercise for developing control is simply learning this process of spinning a pyramid with 100mm balls. You will learn that there is much, much more space in your hand available to you than you think there is. But this whole school of bigger ball size contact juggling suddenly started taking roots and developing, especially in Italy, around the work of Moon. And there are many great Italian contact jugglers that will still say that 85mm and up is a standard size for multi-ball, especially when you're considering these larger size morphing patterns. I think there's great beauty and magic within this, and I agree completely that the extra visibility that comes from larger balls really adds a lot of magic to the performance. But for me, my limitation is still set on 3-ball lines and being able to hold a base of 5 in one hand, as we'll talk about later this week. And so, while I can appreciate this style, it's not something that is in my normal realm of practice. Still, one thing that Moon did specifically well when he made his interpretation of contact juggling known on the internet and began to share his videos was that there is also great beauty in this slow speed. Whereas contact juggling previous to the mid-90s had been dominated by a much faster style, and even Michael Motion's work can be seen as a very quick kind of palm spinning compared to what is standard speed nowadays. So what I really enjoy about Moon's work is how he appreciates the slowness and calmness. I find it very peaceful when I watch Moon videos. And it's something that I would look into if I were you, if you're not used to this particular style of palm spinning. So we're back with a bit of a lesson on 4 balls and the line. What I want you to do is take your balls, hold them again so they make a line, and play a bit with the rotation of the line, keeping everything straight into the cross arm position, back into our normal position. On the other side, cross arm position, back to our normal position. Now, when we're doing this change, we get stuck at this position when we get to this point. Same with over here. We cannot rotate the pattern further. So much like we did way back on day 1, we have to find a way to get our hand around the pattern and open up space for us to be able to continue. What we're doing is using a bit of this technique that we learned on day 1, and we're adding it on to the end. So rather than continuing around here, I'm coming onto the front and I'm getting my hand on the top of the ball. This is going to allow me to rotate through to this position and continue from here. Now, if this hand is only doing the spinning and I'm drawing a big path like this, then I can keep my line all together just like that. My hands are doing 2 different actions, but it's keeping the line clean. Now, my other hand can also become the hand which carries the ball. If this hand goes through that way, then when I come to this position, I want to start to get my hands around and I get on top back here. Now I can rotate through and come back to my start. So here's the rotation using the other hand as the one that's just carrying the ball. Now if we switch left and right, if I get my hand on top on here and pass underneath this way, I can continue my line through and at this point switch to the other side. And I get one rotation of my line using this technique on both hands, and it looks like this. Next, we're going to look at this anti-spin concept. Remember, my spin is in this direction, and I'm moving my hand in that direction, that's a spin. Anti-spin is achieved by rotating the balls in one direction, but moving the hands around in another direction. It's not quite the same pattern when we're working with 4 balls as it is with 2 balls where we're drawing across. Let's go to our line. Think about this rotation. Let's understand that what's happening here on both directions is spin. As I turn the balls this way, I'm also turning the balls this way. It means that my line stays intact. Now, we can separate these two movements. We have this rotation happening on our hands, and we have this rotation happening as we move our hands around in space. So, if I start here and I carry as far as I can, if I uncross my hands but keep spinning the balls in the same direction that I was spinning them before, I can make my anti-spin shift. Again, spin normally, spin with anti-spin. We can check our anti-spin rotation to make sure that everything is lining up by stopping at each quarter rotation and thinking about the line that is being drawn by the 4 balls. We are assembling the line and breaking it apart at each section of rotation. So if we're doing it properly, it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4. Back in the early days of ContactJuggling.org, there used to be a palm spinner. He was a guy named Chico, and he had a bunch of crazy variations. One of my favorite concepts from him was this idea of a ball that orbits a whole line of 3. It takes a bit of time to work out the transfer in the front, but it's a little bit similar to the 4-ball shower. And the thing you're focusing on is trying to keep that line of 3 really still. And a great variation on that is choosing to isolate the orbiting ball, and suddenly you're moving a whole line of 3 around one stationary ball. And if we wanted to continue with this idea, we could also open little doors in different places and allow the ball to come through in different parts of the line, splitting the line apart, allowing the ball in and allowing it to continue around. Really fun exercise, definitely something worth trying out for a few minutes and getting used to the idea of keeping the line straight and consistent while controlling the orbiting ball. That's an old Chico pattern. Okay, then let's start our discussion of bowls. And a pyramid is in fact a kind of a bowl. It's just using 3 balls on the base. So what we're going to work on for a little while is a 4-ball base using 2 hands. And it's a bit like a shower pattern, except everything stays touching. Spend a bit of time warming up this rotation. It's not too tricky in both directions. And once it's starting to turn for you, what we're going to do is we're going to take an extra ball put it on top. And you'll notice there's a nice kind of spacing where all of the balls can kind of hug the top ball and everything is staying in contact the whole time. Now let's go back to our rotation. And what we have is a 5-ball pole. 4 balls are forming the base, 1 ball is staying on top. One of the things we want to focus on here is that top ball. If we're moving our base correctly, then the top ball should be treated much like an isolation. It shouldn't be wobbling about at all. Nonetheless, this is probably one of the easiest bowl tricks that we can work on right now. And this shape by itself is quite interesting. One of my favorite things about this particular position is if I open my hands, I can actually let the top ball drop right down to the bottom and I can push it back up to the top. This by itself is a super nice effect. Another great variation on this is to open up the side balls and reform the base underneath on the other side. It's a bit like a lift and then a pushing out as we reset to our starting position. Lifting around and pulling backwards, pushing out. Now, with a bit of practice, we can also learn to isolate that top ball. We don't need to pull it back towards us and push it out. We just have to be a little bit careful about how those 2 front balls come forward. We're going to talk about this shape for a second. It's a very interesting shape. My friend Ed refers to this as a fish, and I can see why. It does look a bit like it could be a fish. It's also a diamond. And one of the things Ed showed me, because he spent a lot of time researching this fish shape, is a very interesting series of rotations that are kind of unexpected. Watch what I'm doing here. I'm pushing my hands up on top, getting my hands on top of the pattern, and now I'm going to rotate my hands and get right back down to the bottom again. Lifting up to the top and getting underneath that ball. And on this side, same thing. Up to the top and then around to get underneath. Try it out. Once you've got your head around it, move to this position. This can be rotated in exactly the same way. Up to the top, reaching your hands around, coming back. So spend a bit of time figuring out these 2 fish and diamond rotations. It's a bit of a new one, or it's a bit unusual. It's not something that we see very often. It's a very effective piece of technique.